All right, today we're going to talk about functionalism. It is one of the three theories that sociology employs to try to explain society and how it works. So, functionalism is something that was originally proposed by Herbert Spencer. Herbert Spencer was an English man who had studied some of the teachings of Auguste Comte and really, he didn't really agree with that. So he is considered the second father of sociology because of his thinking and writing and teachings about functionalism. So he looked at the world as a survival mode, that it's survival of the fittest. So those who are best able to take care of themselves will survive, and the rest should be left to just flounder or die off. So, I mean, he wasn't the nicest guy, but that's the way he thought. From there, we got Emile Durkheim. Now, Emile Durkheim was French, and he believed that sociology needed to be a scientific study and that we should do research and we should do experiments before we made comments about how things work. So he was the first professor of sociology at the University of Bordeaux in France, and he studied a lot of things, but mostly he studied suicide rates in Europe, and he tried to figure out why people were killing themselves. I don't really know why this was so much of an issue in Europe at the time, but apparently it was. And so Durkheim concluded that the more someone was integrated into society, meaning that they had family or friends or work or church or other things that kept them connected to other people, the less likely they were to commit suicide. And he called that social integration, which we'll talk more about in another chapter. So Emile Durkheim took that idea and then it evolved into what we now know as functionalism. So really, functionalism looks at the world in a macro view. Remember, macro meaning large scale. So we're looking at how large sections of society interact with each other. And functionalism says that the world or society is made up of social institutions that interact with each other and that make life possible. And the more advanced a society is, the more social institutions they will have. So let's think about it this way. In the United States, we have law, we have government, we have education, we have family, we have medicine, we have technology, business. All of those are social institutions. In some other societies, they may not have that many. They may just have family and maybe government, or they may have, a combination of some other things. And so when we look at how a society functions, which makes it easy to remember that that is functionalism, we're looking at how all of those things work together. And I do this a lot with my hands. So it's complex. It's not really very simple, but it's a complex part of how society maintains its balance, how society evolves, and that sort of thing. So I usually use this metaphor. I use this idea of gears. And so you've got all these gears, and how do they work together? So in our current situation here in 2020, how is our society functioning? And we're not going to talk about whether it's a good or a bad functioning, just how is it functioning? Well, so if we look at these gears, we've got public health, which is a main issue right now with a pandemic going on, especially a global pandemic. And then how does that affect education, government, sports, commerce, supply chains, medical treatment, medical supplies? All of those things then are interrelated. So, if the public health gear breaks in this particular picture, then the other gears aren't going to turn. And that's what functionalism is basically saying, is that everybody has to do their part. Every piece of the puzzle has to work together in order for society to function. And as we know, since March of 2020, the public health gear has been kind of broken, and it has messed up a lot of other things. So when we look at functionalism, there are three kind of rules with it. I don't know if rules is the right word, but three basic tenets of functionalism. All aspects of society are interrelated. Right? That's number one. Everything is connected to everything else. And it's very difficult to separate that. Number two, society evolves over time. They like a slow, gradual change in functionalism. They don't like things to move quickly. So a slow evolution of change is ideal because of number three, society will do everything it can to maintain its balance. So societies like to have things be predictable, normal, if you will, but more predictable in that if this happens, then we can pretty much figure out that this and this and this and this is going to happen. So functionalism looks at how all these things come together to make society work. And as we've all experienced, what happens when it doesn't? What comes to a grinding halt because one section or another didn't work. So the other aspects of functionalism that Robert Merton talked about has to do with the functions of the things in society. So we talk about manifest functions and latent functions and dysfunctions. Dysfunctions, we can start there. Oh my gosh, can you imagine the list of the dysfunctions that there are? So, we don't have enough PPE for people to be able to do their jobs in the hospital. So then people get sick and then more people die and there's fewer people that can help, and, on and on and on, dysfunctions. A manifest function would be something that we intend. So, for example, you're going to college. The manifest function of you going to college is to get a degree, right? That's why you're going. You have a career in mind and it needs a degree, and so you're going to college. But what happens when you go to college? There are some other things that happen that probably aren't things that you intended to happen, but they are a result of going to college. And that would be like meeting your future spouse, making new friends, having experiences that aren't necessarily related to your major. And they're not always going to be good things, but they're still consequences that happen because of whatever it is that you've done. So I hope this helps you. I hope this makes sense. I will tell you that functionalism is just one of three sociological theories. And while it's got its positives, it also has its negatives. It can't explain everything, but it is one way to explain things. So when you check out the other videos about conflict theory and symbolic interactionism, you'll see that, the different ways that we can look at society and try to explain how things work. All right, so I hope that helps, and I'll see you in the next video.